Thank you very much, Mr. Kumaragaru. I believe your work as Indian School of Business is very important milestone that India achieved, particularly when over the years we only had Indian students going all over the world. Now we are glad that we have students coming from outside the world to study at the ISB. I must compliment you on that. My young friends Shauryaveer, Himmat Singhka, Virendra Gupta. I have my colleagues from Parliament who are, I believe, going to interact with you in the second half of this evening's program. A lot of enthusiastic youngsters. I don't know, should I call you boys and girls or
That's been the trend.
ladies and gentlemen?
Boys and girls is good.
Boys and girls is good. I wouldn't mind being called a boy also.
You're most welcome, sir. We'll make you an honorary member.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm actually delighted that CII has a dedicated section looking at engaging the youth in nation building and helping you develop or hone your leadership skills. Because truly, if at all, that is this section of Indian society, the young, impatient, aspirational young boy and girl, is truly what is going to take India to the next level in its journey towards becoming a superpower. And in that sense, the partnership between the youth of India and then the pillars of democracy, whether it's government, whether it's the bureaucracy, the political leadership and media and all these several sectors, that partnership would be completely incomplete were it not for the youth of India, for the enlightened youth, the youth who watches television, the youth who comes out on the streets when there's a problem in administration or something that tears into our very nation's being. And particularly the youth of Delhi, I don't know, do we have a cross-section from across India? Or
36 cities.
36 cities are represented here. If you look at the engagement of the youth in this country, be it the independence movement, be it the movement to save the country from the emergency, where student bodies and youth were at the forefront of the fight against corruption, the fight against autocracy, the fight to bring back freedom of speech and expression in this country, be it the fight of the 80s, when the youth stood up for certain principles, again a fight against corruption, a fight to make India and retain the inclusive character of India, the period of 89-90, which I will not refer back and reignite that old controversy. But it was the youth on the streets which kept the integrity of India alive. And then the last few years, where we have seen the resurgence of youth power, the demand that the youth has on political leadership, on administrative leadership, to engaging or an interactive session, as I was told, we'll have after this. I keep talking a lot about the work that I do in government, the work that Prime Minister Modi is doing, his team is doing. But I thought I'll highlight a few fundamental principles on which we are doing our work or on which our work rests, just to give you a sense of what good governance is all about and what is the changed paradigm of leadership that Prime Minister Modi is trying to bring to this nation. Just so that we are able to recognize that government or running government or even political leadership is not about living on a day-to-day basis. It's not about resolving issues as they come to you. It's about the structural change that is required in the way India is run, the way Indian businesses, the Indian government, the entire society in India should run, or the focus of society should be. And I thought 10 principles of how we are trying to work in government will help you understand the basic philosophy of good governance that Prime Minister Modi often talks about. In our own working in government, in our own decision-making process, we have found these 10 mantras, mool mantras or 10 commandments quite useful. I'll try to bring in a small example with each one of them to help you understand how the government's mind works. The first and foremost to successful implementation of good governance is decisive leadership. It's very important that the leadership has to be able to take the bull by the horns, take decisions in national interest without fear or favor. So when it comes to a challenge that you are confronted with, it's extremely easy not to take a decision. I remember once upon a time, the joke used to be that it's also a decision not to take a decision. But the important thing for a nation to progress is to have the ability to sift the good and the bad, be convinced about your honesty and integrity, and take a decision. And in that sense, even when we were confronted with a Supreme Court order which said that 204 coal blocks are deallocated or have been found to be allotted illegally and arbitrarily free of charge, at that time the general consensus in the nation was we have a deep crisis, there's a challenge. And after what has happened in the last 2-3 days, frankly, for a moment even one gets scared कि कौन सा मंत्रालय ले लिया, कहाँ पे फंस गया. But it's that at that point of time, whether you want to look at it as a challenge or you want to look at it as a crisis. And fortunately, with the support of the leadership that the BJP has, one is able to take decisive decisions, one is able to act in a decisive manner, and that truly is the hallmark of good governance. You cannot have a good government without decisive leadership. At that point of time, coming out with the ordinance, setting challenging timetables before us to run an auction process, developing the technological backbone and framework in which we will run an honest auction process, demonstrating to the world through transparency. You know, the bids were open for public viewing real time. I actually went to the leader of the opposition in the Rajya Sabha to explain to him what we are trying to do in the auctions. And it suddenly struck me, I called my secretary, took out my mobile phone, Googled into the MSTC e-commerce site and showed him real time the bidding as it was happening. And it was open for the 6 billion people of the world to see. There's nothing secret about what we did. But that was coming out of the confidence that you have a leadership at the top, which is willing to back you up and is decisive and is honest. So I believe that was one very important element which has been introduced by Prime Minister Modi and the BJP team and our allies. And I feel very privileged in that sense to work under this team. The second is to do a root cause analysis. In my 9 months, I don't think I have signed probably a single file. I should just maybe put a caveat, kabhi koi ikki dukhi aa gayi hogi to I don't know. But every case that has been referred has been looked at from a root cause analysis basis. We've tried to see that if somebody is stressed about a problem, let's go down to the cause of that problem, try to address that cause so that 50 other people who may otherwise be suffering may not have access to a minister or to somebody and be able to put forth his viewpoint, will also get the same relief as the person who's reached out. And in that sense, every issue, I remember when I just became minister, I would get probably 100 letters a day. I in fact used to at least get 100 files a day to approve. And today, if one was to eliminate the questions in Parliament, and I do about 100 questions before every Monday and 100 before every Thursday to respond to all the honorable MPs, very, very probing questions. But other than that, I barely get 5 or 6 files in a day. Of course, some of it was because there were a lot of backlog of the indecisive period. But a lot of it was to do with individual cases. I mean, to give you an example, if a particular set of companies is not getting a coal linkage. Or just yesterday, let me give you an even more live example of yesterday. A certain file has been put up to me where they say this company is demanding a final certificate for mega power status. It's a status which gives you tax-free import of power plant equipment. So government gives you a provisional certificate, you can import it, then you get a final certificate, after which your bank guarantee is returned. So I said, why has this come to me? They said, no, there was a PPA, but the coal linkage has got cancelled because the coal block got cancelled by the Supreme Court order. Now this company does not have a coal linkage. We don't know how he will supply power under the PPA. So we are not sure whether to give the final certificate to this company. I have not approved that file. I have said, referred it back for certain questions. Now what are the questions I asked? I said, have you in the policy asked for the coal linkage to be defined before you approve the provisional? If you have, then have you checked in all the other 24 cases? Because there are 25 companies who got this benefit. Have all 25 given us the details of this coal block or the coal source? If yes, how many of them were linked to a coal block which is now cancelled? And whatever you want to do, let's form a policy. Either all of them get cancelled or all of them get approved. Then it doesn't need to come to me. I'll approve the policy and then you act on that policy. Then it does, the file does not, 25 files don't have to come to me. Get to the root cause of the file and you're able to eliminate a lot of the bureaucracy, delay. Where I'm sitting and doing speeches and all these functions, the files will only get delayed further. And somebody will suffer in the system. So the idea is focus on the root cause analysis. The third principle was to take outcome-oriented actions. Don't just focus on the outlay. We've heard enough of so much percent is used for education, so much is used for power subsidy, so much is used for maybe healthcare. But when an Acer study comes out and shows us the mirror that India is ranked 71st or 73rd out of 74 countries in the quality of education, I think all the money we spend almost comes to naught for me. I would rather probably spend less, but spend it more effectively, or spend the same amount, but get a better outcome in terms of a literate person who can truly be a good citizen of India and a good citizen and contribute to the world economy. All decisions will ultimately have to focus on an outcome. So when Prime Minister Modi talks of Swachh Bharat, it's the final outcome that he's looking for, a country which not only has its environment clean, but which has sanitation, which has ability for every human being to live a dignified life, which cuts down significantly on healthcare. I'm told more than half the healthcare costs can come down if we have adequate sanitation and adequate cleanliness in our country. So end of the day, all decisions, all policy and program will have to be outcome focused rather than just what are we spending on it. So today, while reviewing the program for creating 100,000 toilets in schools across rural India, which the three ministries under me have undertaken, and we are going to make 100,000 toilets for boys and girls in rural schools across India, mostly in the rural areas, which originally was estimated to cost much less, but now the cost is becoming more because I'm adding that we should make sure there's water. Don't want to create a toilet without a water source. So we're trying to see where we need to have a hand pump, where we need a bore well, where we need a motor which can take water into an overhead tank, and some places solar pump. So you add all that, the budget went up, but I said not a problem. I'd rather spend a little more for an effective outcome than report that I have created 100,000 dead toilets. The fourth principle is time-bound execution. I mean, you'll have to be effective in your work. I remember on 12th of December when the coal mines ordinance was to be passed in Lok Sabha as a bill, a very senior honorable member of parliament across the aisle, who's a former minister of the same department that I hold now, had cast aspersions on my ability to deliver. In fact, he had said this minister seems to overpromise and I'm sure he will under-deliver. He should rather focus on under-promising and over-delivering. And 4-5 days back, when I was once again back in Parliament for passing the same bill again, because the Rajya Sabha last time never functioned. At that time, I started not by responding to the 20 members who spoke on the bill this time, but by responding to what the erstwhile minister had said on 12 December, where he had said that India has produced, or the Coal India Limited has grown by 1.5% at an aggregate CAGR growth of 1.5% over so many years in coal production. And this foolish minister is saying we'll take it up to 1 billion tons, which will require an 8% growth, which is never going to happen. And then this even more foolish minister sets timelines when he brings out the ordinance and rules and says we'll auction as per these timelines. Right? But I was very happy to report to him 4 days back that not only has Coal India already achieved 7% growth in production in our first 9 months, which has never happened before in so many years. In fact, today afternoon while I was reviewing the toilets project at the aside, I've told all the MDs, put in a little more effort and let's try and do that 8%. But unless we set challenging tasks ahead of us, if I had targeted 3%, maybe achieved 3% or 4 and over-delivered as I was offered to do, I would still not have achieved 7%. But I think because we set challenging tasks and focused on the task at hand in a time-bound manner, we are already at 7%, 7.2 at last count. And today I've tried and told them 17 more days. Let's go for it and try and make 8% growth. So and the other target, the other point about timelines, every timeline has been met. And auctions have happened smoothly as per plan. But if I had never set those timelines, I'm sure I would have had enough excuses to give for not completing it by 31st March, which is the time Supreme Court had given. Incidentally, when the Supreme Court gave the 6-month time for the old allottees of the coal blocks and said that after 6 months they'll revert to government, it was agitated in the court that it's too little a time. What will happen after 6 months? And the Attorney General under my instructions said, the government will handle it, you don't worry. And the Supreme Court in its order has written that. The government is saying they can do it, so we give only 6 months time. And I'm happy to tell you not one mine will close. Everyone will work and continue to produce to serve the nation. The fifth issue is prioritization. You should be able to prioritize your work. What is the greatest priority for the nation to address? What should we be focusing on first? Of course, one learns along the way. So, just as I was baptized by fire the third day of my becoming a minister, Delhi had that huge storm. And I don't know if some of you who are from Delhi may recollect those agonizing days of power cuts. And unfortunately, I still keep my mobile phone next to my bed. So I used to get calls at 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the night telling me, oh, we don't have power in Preet Vihar. And a journalist friend of mine, his wife called up that we don't have power in Chittaranjan Park for the last 4 hours. It was a daily occurrence. But as my wife often tells me, it was great that that happened to me. Incidentally, the second or third day, I didn't have power in my house for 4 hours. And मैं तो आके थका मरा सो गया था. I think I slept at about 1:30. At 3 o'clock, my wife woke me up. And I had slept with no power, but I was so tired on 29th, on 1st or 2nd of June. I was so tired, I went off to sleep. She woke me up at 3:30. I can't sleep. I mean, you better get up and do something. I said, I'm not the power minister of Delhi, I'm the power minister of India. What can I do about this? Of course, at that time, there was no power minister and no government in Delhi, so I had to, for probably a month, I was reduced to the power minister of Delhi. But it was a great learning experience. And that learning started from, I didn't know whom to call for power in my house. So I looked up the computer, which fortunately still works with battery. Went into the Ministry of Power website of Delhi, located who's the power secretary of Delhi, called him up at 3:30 or 4. To my pleasant surprise, he picked up the phone. But sadly, only to inform me that he has resigned from the service 3 years back. Of course, the next day there was a lot of inquiries and a lot of people moved made a lot of effort and we got things sorted out. But that one night which I suffered was a great night because I learned a lot in that night. And that's how you start learning, first to start addressing the problems. Then when you get into the problems, you realize there's no transmission and distribution into Delhi. Go a step further and you realize all of South India, where you come from, Kumar, is suffering from power shortages because we can't transmit power to Andhra Pradesh, to Telangana, to Kerala, to Karnataka, to Tamil Nadu, despite having surplus power in this country. I mean, as we speak today, ladies and gentlemen, I have surplus coal, I don't know whom to sell to. I have surplus power, I don't know whom to sell to. With power having grown by also 11% in the last 9 months. Another record. We never had 11% growth in power generation. So broadly, what I'm trying to say is it's very important to prioritize. So I know I don't need to spend on generation as much as I need to spend my effort and time and money on transmission, distribution, sub-transmission, the burned transformers in rural India. Preetam is suffering enough whenever she goes to her village. Dushyant says the same thing. The burnt transformers in rural India, the lack of facility coming into Delhi, the poor infrastructure within cities, power theft, the lines. I mean, you go to Chandni Chowk, go to Preet Vihar, wherever, Harsh Vihar, all these places, it's terrible that so many years after independence, years of spending billions of dollars, we still have power lines just floating around. I mean, it's a tinder box. I don't know what will happen if, God forbid, something goes wrong. Still have fires in Jharia for what, 30, 40, 50 years. Coal mines are spurting out fire and fume and flame. And things are not getting sorted out. So one has to prioritize, and that's what I've been trying to do. Focus my energies where it's most important. Sixth issue is partnership with stakeholders. It's very important that we work as a team, what Prime Minister alludes to as an organic entity. How can we all pitch in? So when it comes to a situation, like if you look at my day today, I've also had an extensive meeting with the health minister, along with the general who looks after medical health of the armed forces, and the AIIMS director. And we are trying to do a project to upgrade the technology levels of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. We started that project just after Finance Minister Jaitley got cured at AIIMS, and I thought I should give back to AIIMS for the wonderful work the doctors there did there. And we've embarked on a project to make AIIMS one of the world's finest technology-driven medical hospitals. So we had a review meeting of that. It's nothing to do with my department at all. But I'd gone to the medical facilities of the army yesterday because I have not been well. And it struck me we could dovetail the army with that and maybe benefit the entire armed forces. So I invited the general to come in also. We spent an hour and a half reviewing the plans of AIIMS and seeing if that could be translated into the 300 hospitals all over the country that the armed forces run. And we have at least conceptualized a vision how we'll make sure that a Jawan serving in Siachen or at the Kargil border also, should he have a problem, will always have a chip on his identity card by which the paramedic there will have his entire history and possibly could save a few more lives. So we are an organic entity. It's not that that's health department problem or Parikar's problem in defense. And after that meeting, I informed Mr. Parikar in the house that, look, I've had this thing. I'm engaging the army people. I hope it's okay. He said, of course, anything more I can do, tell me. That's the organic entity that Prime Minister Modi is trying to create within the government, with the states, irrespective of political ideology. So it could be a government in Delhi or a government in Telangana or a government in Tamil Nadu. This government's focus is on 125 crore Indians. Every one of them is our customer. And all of you are the stakeholders in the future of India. So our effort is this partnership. Seventh point is, of course, the technology focus. I won't agitate much on it. You are all very digitally savvy. You know about the Digital India program that this government has launched. And as I mentioned, whether it's healthcare in AIIMS, whether it's curtailing power theft at the coal mines, whether it's monitoring the dispatch of coal or power all across the country, whether it's integrating the rural electrification program, or even the auction of coal mines with modern technology and using the best of technologies. The government is using every technological tool at our command to be able to do a more honest day's job and a more effective functioning of government. Eighth issue is to reduce paperwork and red tape. Obviously, that's something the country is agitated about. Every one of you faces this kind of a problem on day-to-day life, just like I mentioned about the root cause analysis. Similarly, Finance Minister Jaitley has just announced that we'll be coming up with a new regulation to make it easier to do business. We are looking at emulating examples like Singapore or Hong Kong, where you can literally seed or start a business sitting on your laptop at home, make everything more towards self-certification, like we did for the gazetted officer certification. There's no more attested copies. You certify your document. We trust you. And just because there'll be a few bad eggs, you can't start distrusting 125 crore Indians. Similarly, we are looking more and more towards self-certification, easy way to do business, reduce paperwork, integrate technology with ability to work faster and more efficiently. The ninth issue, very dear to me because I am a person from that field, is using innovative financing to successfully steer the government's ambitious projects. In fact, आप मेरे साथ आए अभी गाड़ी में, आपने भी शायद थोड़ा सुना. In the drive up to the hotel, we were working on an innovative finance model to make solar power even cheaper than coal-based power. And I'm quite hopeful it will work. आपने तो थोड़ा उसका महसूस कर ही लिया क्या हम बातचीत कर रहे थे. So we are trying to bring in innovative financing models. You saw that in the railway budget, how he's been able to plan for a significant thrust on improving the rail infrastructure without budgetary support or without stressing the people with higher tariffs. And we are hoping to do that across sectors in the government. And last but not the least, no project can be successful unless there's close monitoring and accountability. And clearly, I can tell you one thing amongst his many qualities, this Prime Minister is extremely focused on monitoring the various projects that go on and then holding us accountable for our performance. If I don't perform, the stick it is, and I should be willing to take that. And in that sense, if you take an example like the Jan Dhan Yojana, it did not happen automatically. It is the world's largest financial inclusion program ever undertaken in human history. 11.5 crore accounts. About 115, 120 million accounts being opened in a short span of about 120 days. I remember at Davos, the president of the World Bank, Dr. Kim, actually acknowledged and told me, ever since your Jan Dhan program, I have become a big fan of Prime Minister Modi. It's truly remarkable what India has been able to achieve. And I know for a fact that it required a lot of close supervision right at the top. And I'll tell you an actual conversation. I was discussing with the Honorable PM about certain projects. I'll tell you the project. I was discussing the LED project, which he had launched for converting all street lights to LED lights and giving all of you Delhiites bulbs, at least a small sample, 2 bulbs at very low cost so that it encourages the LED culture. And we are doing it pan-India. So while discussing something, he said, what's the latest, something else we were discussing? He says, what's the number of people who have registered in Delhi for the LED lamps? And I was Fox, I didn't know. I said, I haven't checked of late, I'll get back to you on that. He said, ऐसे थोड़ी project लगने वाले हैं. तो तुम्हें monitoring करनी पड़ेगी, उसके बगैर तो project कभी successful नहीं होगा. And then he recounted how he did Jan Dhan Yojana. He wrote a personal letter to 500,000 bank employees, urging them to participate in this. He would monitor the daily figure personally. How many accounts are opened on a daily basis, state-wise. Every week, and that I knew. In fact, I said, हाँ मुझे मालूम है आप cabinet में हर हफ्ते discuss करते हैं. I said, नहीं, cabinet में तो report पेश होती है. Discuss और monitoring मैं रोज करता हूँ. And every day, the whole nation and the senior bankers had to report back. And that is what brought in the traction, the urgency, the sense of purpose that we have to achieve it, which resulted in the success of such a massive program at an all India level. That for you is the government of Prime Minister Modi, and that's the broad fundamental principles on which we are trying to work. I thought it will be more interesting to focus on this to this very enlightened and young leadership audience, rather than talking the traditional, I did this in coal and I'm going to do this in renewable energy. I hope I've lived up to your expectations. Thank you very much.
So we will have time for about 10 minutes for, the Honorable Minister will take questions. But I do want to just, just share something with you, sir. The Honorable Minister had to come here at 5:15 and was going to take a 7:20 flight to Mumbai. But because he got held up and, there was a media sort of interaction, and obviously, as you can imagine, in the past 2 days, the developments, he actually cancelled his flight. His running temperature is not well. But I just want to, sir, again, sincerely thank you for, taking this time out. I actually took down those 10 points. I missed the 4th one. I'll come back and check with you. But I hope if you have taken down those 10 points, that's good. If not, I can sort of share. I have it here.
I'll add the 4.
This is sort of, as they say, leadership lessons or management lessons in sort of 20 minutes sort of thing, right? Thank you so much. We will have mic runners in the audience. Okay, we'll start with Divakar. So Divakar is from Sikkim. Manu, can we get the mic there, please? My request is keep the questions very brief, no comments, just so that the Honorable Minister can respond. With your permission, sir, we'll take 3-4 questions and then you can answer.
Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for enlightening talk that you gave. The question is on the 10th point, which was accountability. You talked about accountability, and I think that is going to be the force for India also to grow as a nation. My question is, everybody's accountable in this country, but are we also doing something? Is the government also doing something towards bureaucratic accountability? Because if you look at it, for a politician, it's 5 years. For an entrepreneur, it is the client. For a student, it is going to the next class. But bureaucracy, 35 years. There are some bureaucrats who are doing really well, but what about the others who are there in the system and trying to spoil the system? Thank you.
Thank you. Who else? Yes, please. Can we get the mic there? Manu, I think you should be there in the audience and pass the mic, please. Divakar, yeah. Just introduce yourself quickly and this chapter.
Myself, Shyam, coming from Salem chapter. We are running a small power plant. I came all the way from Salem, Tamil Nadu. I have come all the way for hearing the discussion of Piyush Goyal, sir. Sir, one incident shocked me very bad. That is, as you said, down south we are facing severe power crisis. In an article I read that a small lathe operator was not able to get sufficient power, so he closed his business. Because of him, 4 people who are working in his lathe didn't get job. So ultimately what happened is, along with the owner, other 4 people also suffered. Ultimately what happened, the lathe owner went for a security job. See, so it affects the entire system. It's not that food, clothes and house is necessary today. Electricity is the topmost priority which is required now. And that electricity is being utilized by the local, local government for election purpose. That is, they subsidize power and they don't take the accountability on it. So it affects the entire state on a longer run, which affects the industry. And since everything is dependent on industry, it affects the entire growth
I
of
think you made your point. I'm just trying to be very conscious of time. So I think the minister's got your point. He's noted
thank
it.
you.
Thank you. So Karthikeyan from E-Road.
Sir, when can we have like cell phones? We have so many companies operating. The last mile has been so easy. Today I don't like a SIM card, I throw and buy it. But I cannot throw away my utility power. So when can that happen here? Like how I can
Multiple
change my
service
SIM cards, I can change my power utility.
Okay.
Is that possible?
Okay. There's one question there.
Hello, sir. I'm very inspired by the talk we all heard today. My one question is that, following to his point, is now in India right now we have all discoms who are running the utility, but the percentage of losses they show in the ARR is somewhere, at least few of the states have 45%, and that all is being loaded onto the industries. Now, how will we talk about accountability there? And what can be done? Can we have a uniform structure over there?
Thank you. That lady there at the far end, you have to stand up so that, yeah. That will be the last question. We'll then.
I love the way you spoke, and I think it is very inspirational to all of us. I'd like to mention, like for example, when we're dealing with sales, when we have a sales boy, we give the person a certain target, like a target to achieve, and if he achieves, we give incentives. So what I'm trying to understand is in the government, if you're trying to make projects time-bound, making sure paper files get through within a certain period of time, why can't we give incentives to people who are working in the government?
Thank you. I'm going to let the minister respond. I know there are a lot of people wanting to ask questions, but let's see how it goes. No. Every question is important. Should we take... Okay, okay. So a couple of more questions. Who's the very important question? Please don't adjectify your question, but just state your question very briefly. Yeah.
Utkarsh from Ahmedabad. मेरे पापा कोल इंडिया एम्प्लॉई हैं, बेसिकली WCL, एंड मैं वेस्टर्न कोलफील्ड्स लिमिटेड में मैं बहुत पास से देखा है सर, लीजर टाइम बहुत है एम्प्लॉइज़ के पास, जिससे आपकी जो 8% प्रोडक्शन का जो टाइम आ रहा है ना, वो 9-10% हो जाएगा. Sir, please look into that thing.
Thank you. Hari from Madurai.
That was truly
I know. So I'm sorry, I'm going to withdraw my question. The minister says that was a truly important question. So. Hari from Madurai.
Sir, I run a business which needs a lot of coal, and you said that my production of coal has gone up, but we are still import coal from countries like Indonesia. So what is the government actually doing to market the Indian coal better? And the next question would be, in the ports, what are the facilities which are being done for importing of coal and storage of coal? Because moisture has a major role in the quality of coal. Thank you.
Thank you. Bhavin?
Given that we are in 2015, I just wanted to know your perspective of how realistic you think that target is and what we need to do to achieve that.
One last question.
Yeah.
The person at the very
I'm,
far end. Okay, so
I'm
you already
Shanmugam
got
from
that.
Erode.
Yeah.
Can we have one power tariff across the nation?
One power tariff. Okay, so the person at the very far end, yes. Okay. Yeah, that's the last question.
So I'm Ishan from Calcutta chapter. I want to ask that to see the to address to the power shortage, power problem in this country, does the government see nuclear as a better solution than the non-renewable resources, or which one is the major focus of the government? Like which one does the government look forward to answer the problem?
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Now I feel it's easier to answer the member of parliament question than to answer. And I'm remembering that it was again easier to hear Arnab Goswami than these young boys and girls from across India.
With due respect, any other comparison, but not that one.
Thank you very much. There are some very important points that all of you have flagged off. I'll try to briefly address all of them. Clearly, the bureaucracy also should be more accountable. But I don't subscribe to the theory that they are all inefficient and bad. There'll be bad eggs in every field. They are bad politicians, they are bad bureaucrats, they are bad businessmen, they are bad students. So let's not try and castigate an entire set of people or community or people who are doing a certain nature of work. Having said that, the bureaucracy, while you cannot throw them out of job, which is what you're alluding to, how do you hold them accountable? But certainly, the better and the smarter and more efficient bureaucrats get better postings. They get higher up in life, so the secretaries at the central government level would by and large be the star performers or the people who get better postings. At this stage, we are now trying to look for good officers. And then you look at peers giving reviews and you look at what the people have to say about different officers and then try and put them in good positions. I can say for a fact that obviously if I have been able to achieve 7% growth in coal, 11% in power, achieve the auctions on due date, I have done nothing out of that. Not a kilo of coal I have mined, not a unit of power I have generated. It's that same bureaucracy that you are referring to. You have to empower them. You have to be able to back them up. गलतियां भी होंगी, गलतियां होना स्वाभाविक है. Anybody can make a mistake. But if I try to put all the mistakes on them and take all the credit myself, then obviously nobody is going to perform. But I can tell you on record to this August gathering, the entire effort to make all these things happen is being done by that same bureaucracy. And they are accountable to the people, they are accountable to us. Save and accept a few exceptions, India still has a very, very powerful, very dedicated, committed, and I would like to believe in large measure honest bureaucracy. So let's sometimes give them a thumbs up also, appreciate their work, take them to task when some wrongdoing is done. But certainly, on balance, I still believe we have more goodness in this country than bad. So I'm still an optimist. I would urge all of you youngsters not to become cynicists, not to become cynical, not to give up. There's a lot that can be done. The late operator story is certainly very sad. I'm conscious of that reality. Prime Minister himself is extremely focused on our mission to give 24/7 power across India. Southern India has a very challenging situation. Transmission lines to South India are found wanting, are very is not adequate to meet the growing requirement. That's something we can expedite, and I have been expediting. Very recently, we've even started a 26,000 crore rupee project which we approved to add 6,000 megawatt power to the southern states. That'll come up by 2018. Already the current projects we are expediting to do faster than schedule. So you will actually see transmission lines to the south being completed between 3 and 4 months faster than schedule. And we've been able to do it in only 9 months. They must have started much earlier. But using these 9 months, we've been taking decisions, encouraging them to complete faster, which will add another 2,000 megawatt by June, July. So on our side, we are trying to reach out power to South India as much as possible. There are problems with DISCOM's ability to buy power, a lot of other issues concurrently which are being worked on. I do hope you will appreciate these are issues which are inherited or legacy of several decades and will certainly need a little more time to be able to reach the last man. But despite a shortage of monsoon last year and hydel power having significantly fallen in that June, July, August period. You know, monsoon was deficient last year. But we had planned as soon as we got the Met reports, and coal-based power production increased in that 3-month period, ladies and gentlemen, by 21.8%. Which is why none of you faced the stress, except Delhi had a problem of transmission again. But all of India got the power it needed because of coal producing 21.8% more power during that critical 3 months when water was not available. So we are trying our best, and I'm sure those sad stories will become a thing of the past as we are able to reach power and hopefully reach affordable power. So even in the coal auctions, power coal mines are auctioned with a reverse auction where power tariffs will be falling rather than increasing. The electricity supplier being like a mobile operator is something I've already presented to Parliament. The bill is before the Lok Sabha, whose 4 members are sitting here. It is before the Standing Committee of Parliament. What we are providing there is that the last mile supplier can be a competition amongst various suppliers, so that just like a mobile phone, you as consumers will have the ability to choose your supplier, and if you are unhappy with his tariff or his quality, change your supplier. Once that bill is passed, and for your kind information, most states are objecting to that bill being passed. But I'm hoping to persuade them. Once it's passed, the states will have to act, because in a federal structure, power is still a state-controlled entity. The states will have to adopt that system and take it to the last, to its final implementation. But I'm confident that states are also equally conscious of customer service and will certainly do that. The AT&C losses are very high. You want to know even worse figure, it's as high as 80% in some states. 80, 70, 60, 45 in some states, as you rightly said. The national average is daunting, it's 25%. The southern states are actually performing quite well. Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, these are some of the star performers in AT&C losses also. We are working out some new schemes and incentives to encourage states to reduce this to acceptable levels. We're going to give additional grants to state which reaches the acceptable trajectory to bring down AT&C losses. And I'm quite confident in the days to come, we will see a significant improvement on this. Because every unit saved is equivalent to about 1.25 units produced, and certainly helps also reduce environmental damage. So we're very, very conscious on reducing losses and wasteful electricity consumption both. I've already addressed the incentives to people in government to perform. There are certain incentive schemes. People are paid certain extra bonuses for good, effective performance. But I would only agree with you, it could be much better. Given the choice, if I had the ability to give incentives, I would certainly increase it manyfold. And I'm sure would have been able to get far more returns out of that increased incentive. But we are working in a system where the entire government has to work as one uniform system. So we are looking at more innovative ways of incentivizing them. Thank you for your information on WCL, but I can assure you that we are trying to get them to perform to their maximum ability. On our side, we are trying to support their efforts with better technology, equipment, encouraging them to participate in this national mission to take Coal India production to 1 billion tons. I have absolutely no hesitation in saying that so far, the support and the effort being put in by all the employees of Coal India, top to bottom, CMD down to the last worker, are phenomenal, and a salute to all the employees of Coal India. Sir, you talked about coal requirement that your company has. I know moisture is a problem when it comes from Indonesia. India has huge coal reserves, but relatively lower grades of coal and very high ash content. Despite that, India cannot afford to continue to import except coking coal, which India does not have in sufficient measure. We may need to continue to import coking coal. My own sense is another 2.5 years, India will not need to import any coal for power generation. We will have a challenge of transporting such large quantities, challenge of disposal of fly ash, but we are working on all of those challenges and those difficulties. But we'll certainly put an end to import of coal for thermal requirement. Again, save and accept if any coastal plant finds it economical to import rather than to take it from Orissa or Jharkhand. This 100 gigawatt, ladies and gentlemen, is an absolutely real, certain target. We don't give targets to faff around. We are going to add 100 gigs of solar power in this country. The target is by 2022, but Prime Minister Modi is not going to be happy with that. He wants it much faster. So I am working, and this gentleman who was on the car with me will stand testimony that even on this 20-minute journey to come here, we were working on an innovative financing model to make this 100 gigs happen. There are two challenges before me. One, to bring down the cost of funding it. Two, to make the transmission and distribution network to be able to transmit it. And a third challenge, to create bankable power purchase agreements, to give an assurance to investors that they will not be left in the lurch halfway in between. So the counterparty risk has to be mitigated, and we are working on all these three challenges. One power tariff across the nation. Ideally, I would like to move out of regulation of power tariffs. I would love to see the day where competition prevails and the tariff regulator is only there to ensure that you are not being fleeced, like sometimes the airlines do. So the effort that we would like to focus on is to bring in more competition and gradually move towards regulators setting a top of the band tariff and market forces giving you better service and lower tariffs. But if you want an honest answer, a national single power tariff certainly looks like a very distant dream, particularly considering the long distances fuel has to travel, the inadequate natural gas that we have in India, the inability of India to have adequate transmission and distribution costs being socialized across the national network. There are significant challenges, and we'll have to live with some different tariff structures across states and across consumers. So farmers are in a distressed situation, will have to continue to be supported. As many of you are aware, elections are won and lost on 80 or 90 rupees being promised as a subsidy in an electricity bill per month. If elections can be won and lost on that, I'm sure you wouldn't like me to be out of office even faster than my term ends by trying to bring about even more rationalization of tariffs. And the last question was on nuclear energy being better or worse. I think the government's job is not to stand in judgment or not to be ostrich about its philosophy or its policy. We have to assess everything on merit. So maybe nuclear power may not make a lot of sense in Orissa or Jharkhand, where there's enough coal. but may make eminent sense in Tamil Nadu or Kerala or the borders of Maharashtra or the borders at the Indo-Pak or Indo-China borders. So every possible source of energy has to be looked at contextually. And one has to do a cost-benefit analysis for every project on a standalone basis. So the government has an open mind, and we look at all sources of energy for potential service to the people of India. Thank you very much.